Yeah, boy, it's August 5th, and it's episode 176, and this is the Fantasy Football Auctioneer Podcast. The Fantasy Football Auctioneer Podcast is the official podcast of the fantasyfootballauction.com, the only website dedicated to fantasy football auctions. We've got a great show for you tonight. Tonight, we're going to answer all kinds of listener questions that came to us from Twitter. It's going to get us into a ton of different rule settings, such as IDP, Superflex. I think this one's going to be a good one for lots of different people out there. But of course, our analyst, well, of course, only one of our analysts is here, Blister. He's out golfing today. But he's finally got the kids done, and he's ready to pod tonight. Slim, how's it going tonight?
It's going awesome. I got my daddy duties done here. Made a deal with my wife that I could rip a pod off really quick here and still have some time for watch a flick or something like that. So she agreed, and it was all good.
Oh, there you go. This is I cracked a beer tonight for the pod, and I think yesterday was the first time in almost 2 weeks my liver is about to explode. The in-laws were in, so we had all that going on. We had our buddy from overseas, so we had some of that. I had a buddy from Winnipeg in. It was a lot of. It was just a lot.
Yeah,
Slim. It was a lot.
Oh, I hear you. Summer holidays. It's not even. It's just the casual throughout the day binging and.
Yeah, well, that's right. You had day drinking, right?
Oh, that'll get you. Have a couple more with supper, and you have sleep good at night. But then all of a sudden you think back and you're like, holy crap, I've been 7 days straight. I've been filling my my body with trash here. I need to take a couple days off.
Well, the last good night we did the local resort across the river, Old Shay Shay. We were going over for one quick tea that ended up to be
that's
three
never
quick
the
teas, never good. And then a little bit of wings over at our friend's establishment down the road here, and then I think we shut it down out here in the gazebo. Sun was almost up. Yeah, it was a good one. Anyways, but it did make me. I was looking on Twitter here earlier, and I saw Scott Fish and those guys were all in some sort of draft, and there was beers flowing and whatever, and there were selfies and like they were doing karaoke in cars and stuff like that. It looked like it made me get kind of excited. I took out the calendar. It's August, and went through with my wife. I got a draft on this night. I got a draft on that night. We're golfing and drafting on this day. So it was good. Pencil it in so she knows. So you're getting fired up here, Slim.
Me too. I actually really am. Just talking to people on Twitter, and I don't know. It's starting to set in. I'm like getting to build a few teams, and it's fun. Yeah,
awesome. Okay, so let's just get into this, Slim. So if you guys are ready, then I'm ready. Let's cock the hammer. It's time for action. All right, so like I said, Slim, we got a good show tonight. We're going to answer all types of listener questions, and we've got a whole bunch of rule settings that are fairly common out there that we'll hit on tonight. Like I said, from IDP to Superflex. So we've got a lot of things to chat about. First thing before we get into those listener questions, though, Slim, just want to give everybody a shout out for helping out with the mock auction draft contest. So this is that contest where you send us in your mock auction results. So because we pride ourselves on having the most accurate auction values, right, the drafts, but we do need help. So if you send us your mock auction results, like if you do an ESPN mock or Yahoo mock or a real draft for that matter, I've seen in the last couple of days, we've seen some guys who've done auctions on draft, for instance, and have sent in the results. That's awesome. You forward us those results, maybe in the subject line rule settings, so that we have an idea of what those numbers relate to. But send in your results to auctionmockdraft@gmail.com. And every time you do that, we're going to put your name in a hat for a free auctioneer level membership to the website. So that's a $15 value. So you send in the result, we put your name in, you send in the result, you put your name in. And some guys are sending in like 10, 12 results at a time here, right?
Copious. Which has been awesome. And just to echo like what you said, I mean, before what we do is we just did the mocks ourselves, and that's all we had. Now I'm kind of the one that sifts through it, which I like to do. I've got a little bit of time in the summer, thankfully, but I've found it so helpful to have just all this extra data. It's been amazing. I feel like it's really helped us at least be on the early ends of some of these trends that are happening. We'll probably talk about it a little bit. I know we talked about it last week, but like some of this RB stuff that's going on, that's just getting out of control. We're seeing it really early because we get so much mock draft data coming in. So big thanks to everybody. Hopefully it's helping you in your draft. And yeah, it's just been really cool to see the support.
Well, and that's the big thing, is that we don't just run an algorithm based on rankings to throw in the auction values. We're actually running this on mocks. So the more mocks that we have coming in and actual drafts that we have coming in, the more accurate our auction values are. And I mean, I see it all the time. If you look at what our auction values are versus what's going on out there, I find that when we see actual results coming in, that boom, that's exactly where we have them. Boom, that's exactly where we have them. And it's a lot different than these like just fabricated ones that come out of an algorithm, I find anyways. So it's got to be helpful for our listeners and for our members when they're going into the draft to have those actual numbers there. It helps with the tiering, it helps with the drafting, and it helps with everything.
Yeah, I mean, the danger with those algorithms is you're not drafting against a computer, like, to be completely honest. I mean, obviously, so the data that comes in, especially this time of the year, it is user-based. I mean, you're seeing the tendencies of real people, and which is good because you're going to draft against real people. So, what I find with those algorithm-derived values, a lot of the times, they're too low, and often, and especially for the top end guys, in a lot of cases. So, I mean, especially this year, these top end guys aren't going for low prices, and right. I'm anxious to get more real draft data than just mock draft, but because I think some guys in mocks just go balls to the wall and don't care because there's no skin in the game for them. Whereas people might reconsider in their real draft paying up for some of the prices on some of these guys, but right. We'll see kind of how things start to shake out here this month for sure.
So if you get your results, send them to us at auctionmockdraft@gmail.com. We'll enter your name in to the draw to win a free auctioneer level membership. This week's winner sent in a ton of entries, which helped him in the random draw. So congratulations to Kyle Kirby. I enjoyed the Chalupa Batman reference, which was good. I had a good chuckle when I saw that, which reminds me of a little story, Slim. I had a kid when I was student teaching. He was this terrible stories from North Africa, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, he answered this question, grade 7 science. He stands up at the side of his desk and says, Mr. blah, 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 this is my answer. And then he sat down. But when he did put up his hand, I called out his name and I said, Chalupa. And his name wasn't Chalupa, but it was right when everything with Taco Bell and the little dog and the whole bit. And his name was Chololawa. But I called him Chalupa, and the class hesitated to laugh because it's this new kid from North Africa. But anytime I see that word Chalupa, I think, how I just blew it when I was trying to talk to this poor nervous kid from North Africa in Winnipeg.
You gave him the nickname, and
now Taco Bell now or something. Right?
Well, maybe, yeah.
Taco, maybe they call him Taco.
Well, that would be better than probably a lot of the other ones they could call them, but
yeah, well, that's true. Anyways, congratulations to Kyle Kirby. I will send you a link in an email with the way to go get your free membership. So anyone else, if you want to enter in for next week, email your mock auction results to mockdraft@gmail.com. Anyways, there we go. There's our little plug, but it has been super helpful, son. So
very. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's get into our listener questions here, Slim. So this segment's called We Just Got a Letter. So lots of Twitter questions here. The first one, Slim, is a little bit lengthy and into the point where footballauctioneer@gmail.com, because it didn't fit into the Twitter little box there. You couldn't even add to it with a GIF, you know. So we got the email, and it's quite lengthy here. So Slim, we're going to answer a part of this, but you have an idea for maybe how we can get all of our listeners to help our buddy out. So this is FF_gouge. It's Eric Ludwig, who we've had on the pod before. So he's got a long question. We're going to answer a small part of it. But Slim, what's your idea to try to get him some more info?
So I thought maybe we could post a link. We'll take this question and kind of create it as like some type of document where we can just post the link to it and people can just read it and see for themselves, because he's in a very unique league. It's a 10-team league, Superflex. It's a keeper league, fairly shallow benches, lots of flex spots to go with the Superflex, but it's an auction. It's also a keeper. They're doing a startup. They can, all the fab money they want to keep, they have to roll over from what they don't spend at the draft. So essentially, if you wanted, you could blow it all and not have any fab money for the rest of the year if you wanted to do that. And then they have very specific rules on keepers for the following year. You pay based on the position they play, not who they are and how much you spent on them the previous year. So there's a lot of strategy. There's a taxi squad that you have to fill up, and there's strict rules on, guys have to have less than 3 years of league experience to be on that taxi squad, and then you can poach them, and lots of stuff going on here. It's a very unique league, which has led to the length of this question. And essentially, right, I think Eric was just trying to wrap his mind around some of the rules and just get some outside opinions, and he sent the question. So I thought, what if we just posted on Twitter and let a lot of our followers take a look at it if they want, and just toss their 2 cents into Eric, and you could tweet him and just let him know what you think, and help him out, and even just start a conversation, because I think a league like this sounds like it'd be a heck of a lot of fun. Maybe it gives ideas to some of you guys that are out there in terms of a league that you might want to start or play in yourself. So I think a league like this, I guess, would just be good for the auction community as a whole in terms of driving the popularity of auction leagues in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought what's interesting, so maybe we could talk about it really quick, was you mentioned it earlier, the keeper rules. So you're given a $200 budget that can be used on keepers and to bid on free agents and for your fab. But like you said, it's not like, oh, you get to keep Kamara, you drafted him for $3 last year, you get to keep him for, 3 + 5, so $8 or whatever, like a typical keeper league might be. This is like your first QB, you're going to keep a QB, it's $15. Your first running back is a 20 smash, your second running back is a 10 smash. Your first wide receiver is $35. Your second wide receiver is $20. So if you're going to keep one quarterback, 2 running backs, and 2 receivers, all of a sudden there's $100 of your $200 budget. So it becomes pretty interesting, some of the strategy behind that. Like, so my gut when I first looked at it was like, well, you probably keep one of each position. You Superflex, keep a quarterback for 15. Yeah. You keep a running back at $20. Absolutely. If they're going for 60, keep a wide receiver for 35. Yeah, for sure. Cause they're going in the 50s. I mean, that's my gut, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think you almost want to play it like a dynasty, because the values, say I keep an RB, my first one's $20. Well, that's actually pretty cheap in the context of, say I want to keep Le'Veon Bell. There's no way I got him for less than that the previous year. So to keep a guy like Lev at $20 is actually a pretty good value. So I might be thinking of it like, I want to accumulate some elite talent and just keep rolling them year in and year out at these prices. The catch becomes, how do I get all that talent to begin with? Right. Because, I mean, right now that's a startup. They're going to do $300. that's going to include their fab for the year. But then now after this season, so after the season's done, then they get their $200 that they can start allocating to keepers and things like that. So, and they can only roll over, I think, up to $50 or something of that into their fab for the following year. So, yeah, I think there's just a lot to take in, and yeah, it's for a league like this, I think, you just got to get out there, and there's not really any predicting what others are going to do necessarily. I think it's going to, it's just going to be get in there and just jump right in.
Well, so Eric, let's DM him first, Slim, just in case he didn't want it to be like 100% public, all the stuff. Right. And when if that's the case, if he's already with us sharing, then so let's just share it for everybody to see. If other guys want to put in a little bit of info here and there and help Eric out get ready for this startup, because it's pretty unique. But you're right, pushing the envelope all the time, right? Just like Scott Fish does, pushing the envelope of the rules and the settings and those types of things, roster constructions, etc. So
exactly, that's right.
All right, awesome. Okay, let's go on to our next question here, Slim, and then we'll get into really the meat of what's going on out there right now. So the next question is from @M_Niller. This question, it's interesting here, Slim, and it really will talk to strategies of going into your auction draft. So the question is this: would you rather have one of your top 7 or 8 RBs at a premium, so like spending a little bit more money, or 2 of your top 15 wide receivers at a bargain, so maybe they're coming in a little under what our AAVs are? Because he's finding that the top 8 to 10 RBs are hitting around $60 or more. So what do you think, Slim? Would you rather have those top end RBs but spend a few extra bucks, or save the money and receivers?
I'm gravitating towards the running back. I get what he's saying. Yeah, running back prices are getting astronomical.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, I don't know if, like I said, if this is just people just not giving a shit when they mock draft, they just want one of these guys, or if they just are, for lack of a better term, just kind of being slaves to this running back craze, and they just feel the need to have one as well. But yeah, it is tempting to just almost pass at running back, even though there's a lot of really quality options there. It's tough to say, because for me, in the top 15 wide receivers, there's a couple, namely Larry Fitzgerald. A lot of these names we're probably going to talk about a few times tonight. A guy like Demaryius Thomas, even T.Y. Hilton is still going for what I consider a pretty considerable value. And those guys all kind of fit into my top 15. So there is still value to me in that top 15. So it doesn't make it, I don't feel the need to necessarily just completely bypass some of these top running backs. I guess it depends too on knowing your league. Like, if you really believe that everybody in your league is going to spend 60 plus on, say, the top 8 running backs, then obviously you're going to probably want to have a plan B of looking somewhere else. Maybe you pivot and go and take Christian McCaffrey as your RB1 and try and get a couple of those elite wide receivers. But I think in most drafts, you can still get a quality running back for under 60. I've seen drafts where Melvin Gordon's gone over 60, but I've seen a lot where he doesn't. Dalvin Cook he's climbing, but he's still floating in the early 50s in a lot of the drafts I've seen. The closest one that's going to 60s is Saquon Barkley. I have a feeling that's probably roughly where he's going to stay. Again, being draft specific for sure, but so I don't think you necessarily have to just like completely get out of that top 8. Maybe you want to nominate one of those lower guys really early and just see if you can snag one for a decent price when Gurley, Zeke, Bell, DJ are still on the board. I don't know. Again, it's going to kind of come down to knowing your league, I think, in a lot of these instances. So anyway, I don't know. How do you feel about that, Bex?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm with you there too. And I think, again, just being a savvy drafter, a savvy nominator, trying to find the sweet spot. We'll talk about the auction U coming up in Kiwi's question, but we talked about this the other night on the pod too. Just because they're all going, there's a bunch going for around 60 doesn't mean that if you don't play your cards right, maybe you get the $60 guy for 57 and then all of a sudden it's not a premium anymore. You know? So I think you can do that too. And I mean, right now, I think that I'm in that ballpark of kind of targeting that. I think that you can make a lot of hay. Sorry for the blister reference there, making hay, but I think you make a lot of hay at receiver for sure. And I think you could save a couple bucks too by being smart with your quarterbacks and smart with your tight ends. And I think that you could scrape that money together by digging, under the couch cushions to pay up a couple bucks for.
When you say making hay, when you use that terrible cliche for receivers,
cliche alert, cliche. Sorry.
Are you talking at the top end of the receivers, or are you talking more in the middle tiers?
Kind of what you're saying. In that tier 2, tier 3-ish.
Yeah.
If I'm looking right now, make hay. Like, I mean, I'd be okay with Darius and Golden Tate. Like, you know what I mean? Like, to me, any of those three, if I'm just looking really quick at random names here, any of those three could finish as mid-range wide receiver ones. They all have good upside. They all have high floors. Yeah, all right. So I'm going to save a little bit of cash with some of those guys. And then, sit around and wait to draft our perennial favorite Phillip Rivers or, Matt Ryan for $1. He's been, falling. And have $4 or $5 extra to be able to pay up. And instead of going Leonard Fournette at 52, like, let's go for Saquon at 57.
Oh, yeah.
Or, instead of Melvin Gordon at 54 or 55, let's go for Kamara at 60, right?
Well, sure. Take Barkley, say it in the mid 50s. Or one of those other guys, even maybe you can get Delvin that cheap, or one of those, and then Larry Fitz at 22 and Diggs at 28.
Yeah,
there you go. And there's three pretty steady, I think, fantasy contributors, and you probably didn't really smash your budget to pieces by going a route like that.
Right.
So. Like you said, I still think that there is ways to manipulate those top tiers to your advantage. It's just going to be a matter of trying to find the time to do it in your draft, or maybe the just the right player to do it with. Some of it might be luck. I mean,
for sure.
I guess what I'd be saying is I don't want to be the first one buying one of those top running backs for 65 plus. We'll say that, because then I think by doing that, so say Todd Gurley's nominated the very first guy in your draft and you go and buy him for 67. If there is values coming later, like even a couple players later, you're screwed. You're probably not going to be able to do anything with that. So maybe let that first guy go and just kind of feel it out a little bit, because, knowing that, if I have to, I'll just buy David Johnson for 64, if that was what you wanted to do. Like, at least it still gives you some options. You can kind of, it's, like boxing, you just kind of, getting a feel the first couple picks, seeing which owners are being super aggressive at what positions, and, kind of trying to gauge the tone of the draft itself. And, that's all part of the strategy and the gamesmanship of the auction draft. So hopefully a live draft, I guess that makes things easier. That's what I keep picturing in my mind, because I guess we do our home league as a live draft. And I think of those things that I try and do in that setting. Obviously online, it's a little bit trickier, but you can still try and maybe pick up some trends just by how aggressive guys are bidding on certain players.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that strategy, or what scenario that you were describing, I was listening to the CBS pod earlier today when I toilet. Anyways, did a good job. I thought I got her taken care of. I didn't break it. Well, maybe. Anyways, but they were talking about their mock auction that they did, and it was exactly what you said. So Dave Richard, he spends big on wide receiver, and I sent you the link to it, Slim. So you know they have $100 budget, but he's spending 29 on Julio and 29 on who was the other guy? Wasn't Nuke, it was maybe Odell or something. Anyways, so he's basically thrown out $60, 60% of his budget for those two receivers, and Eisenberg just sits back, and then all of a sudden he just goes bang, 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 and he's picking up those guys that we were talking about at receiver, and cheap. But actually, I think he grabs a guy like Devontae Adams for like $11 and Ty for $10, and he's getting quality guys and for dirt cheap. And so that was the idea he talked about too, was that in that mock with analysts, I may add, he just kind of, cliche alert, sat in the weeds, right? And just kind of waited for everyone to spend their money. And then all of a sudden no one had any money left. And because, they're spending it on a big wide receiver and big running backs. So now everyone's tapped, and he looks over at the rosters and he goes, oh yeah, I know where I'm going here. And he finds a sweet spot everywhere. So it's just exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah, I think you can see it coming too when you start seeing just huge prices that are above and beyond what you're expecting at any position. You'll and if you're seeing it over and over, that very quickly there's going to be values coming, because it doesn't take long when you're buying players for $65 for that to really eat away at other areas of your budget. So know that.
Well, I was going to ask you something, what you thought about this. Dave Richard on there, who is in my Scott Fishbowl League, and I questioned on Twitter today on some of his comments basing on his ranks, but that's fine. Anyways, but he had an interesting comment, and I just thought I wanted your feedback on this. He made a comment, something along the lines like he has a rule, he calls it the 50-20 rule or the 50-25 rule. And it's this, save 20 to $25 for the last half of your auction. So never spend more than 75% of your budget in the first half, so that you have money kicking around when those values hit. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't mind that, actually. I mean, especially this year. I think you see so many high-priced guys now that it's not even going to be in the second half of your draft. It's going to be earlier. There's going to be a lot of values. I mean, when I'm looking at a lot of these mock drafts coming in, and again, they're mocks, and guys have gone crazy sometimes early on, but the kinds of players you're getting for less than $10 in many cases it's unbelievable. I mean, there's running backs that I think have top 24 potential, maybe even top 15 potential. There are lots of receivers that go for less than that regularly, like quality players like Michael Crabtree and Pierre Garçon, Chris Hogan just go dirt cheap a lot of the times. And I mean, if I could take three of those guys as my wide receiver 3 through 5, I'd feel pretty good about that. So I actually don't mind that theory. I've had it work well in the past and things like that. I usually try and do something like that for my wide receiver 3 and get a guy, because I feel like there's always a quality guy that I think has top 24 potential that goes for really, really cheap, that I can just toss in for peanuts as my wide receiver 3. So, I think there is something to that.
Okay, and so it could be that tiebreaker, right? Am I going to bid up this guy? No, hold on to my money a little bit, because I got values coming. So just a little check-in. I thought it was a good, easy rule to kind of remember. So I liked it. Okay, so second part of this question from M_Milner. He asked this, Slim. So he's also curious on how you feel about running backs and wide receivers and their replacement value in PPR. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, we kind of talked about this off the air a little bit. And I guess for me, if we're looking at, like, I'm not sure if he's just referencing in general or more the higher priced guys. I mean, if you're talking about per price, I mean, this was a big one of the proponents, I guess, probably for RB0 was if you go and spend big money on a position like running back, it's a volatile position. Their probability of injury is a lot higher than other positions, so there's some risk there. But I think in terms of the replacement value, I actually like taking flyers later in the draft on running backs over receivers. The thought being for me is, if a starting running back on an NFL team gets injured, generally speaking, the backup or somebody else on that team, and it's usually fairly easy to, in most cases, to predict who it's going to be, is going to be the direct recipient of the fantasy points given up by that injured player.
Right.
At wide receiver, that doesn't happen that way necessarily. I mean, if Julio Jones gets injured, Mohamed Sanu all of a sudden isn't just catapulting to a wide receiver one in a top 12 wide receiver weekly. Whereas if Ronald Jones or something gets hurt, Peyton Barber could end up being an RB1, start a top 12 running back in a lot of weeks. Or if Devontae Freeman gets hurt, then Tevin Coleman could vault into that role.
Right.
So I think that for the relative price, I'll spend a couple bucks on a running back versus a couple bucks on a wide receiver, just on the chance that if there's an injury, and I don't play for injuries, I try and pick players that I think have upside other than just having a guy get hurt in front of them. Ideally, you're getting, I think this is why Tevin Coleman is probably, oftentimes the most expensive of the backup running backs. Well, because he gets touches regardless if Freeman is injured or not. But when Freeman does get hurt, then we know that Tevin Coleman is automatically thrust into a heavy workload. So, I don't mind.
This year's guy like that is like a Gio Bernard too, right? That's going to go for under $10 easy, but satellite back plus. Right?
For sure. There's always going to be a handful. I mean, Matt Breida is an interesting guy for me. We haven't seen Jerick McKinnon handle a full work share. It's kind of looking right now like he could be kind of the RB2 in San Francisco. So what if McKinnon gets injured, or, what if they go 60-40? I mean, Breida has value just in that. And then if McKinnon does get injured, all of a sudden, he's going to be a lot more valuable to your fantasy team. So I think that's what you want to be paying attention to this time of the year, is trying to find those positions. It's why I like drafting even right now a guy like Royce Freeman. Even if he doesn't get named this quote unquote starter, I think he's going to get touches week in, week out. And if, they do a timeshare or running back by committee, and, Devontae Booker gets hurt, then Freeman could just be getting 20 touches a game. It's why I like Dion Lewis. He's cheap. If Henry gets hurt, then he's going to get probably have a really big workload. He's probably going to get a pretty decent sized workload already based on what they've said. So at their prices, I'm taking Dion Lewis over Derrick Henry all day, because Derrick Henry's probably double the cost in most cases. So not that I dislike Henry. I just think he goes for too much with that committee that they have going.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes total sense. So hopefully that helps your question there, M. Miller, about replacement values. And I thought it's good talk there about paying up for running backs versus wide receiver bargains. So it's good. Let's move on to the next one here, Slim. This is at Caleb Lampert. He asked this: am I crazy in preferring to grab and Joe Mixon over getting a stud in PPR, especially if I round out the running back position with a Geis or, well, right now Rex Burkhead. Maybe he can't afford Rex Burkhead with that. But what do you think? Is he crazy for grabbing McKinnon and Mixon?
Well, no, I think the thought process is sound. I mean, I think we kind of talked about it in the previous question a little bit. We know that the top running backs, the prices they're huge. And if you don't want to go that route, then, I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to stack two guys like that. I mean, now that you start building in some greater risk by doing that, I mean, I think we'd all say that a running back like Zeke Elliott is a much safer bet in terms of fantasy floor than a guy like Jerick McKinnon, but his price also indicates that. So I don't mind that approach at all. If you, at the end of the day, like, I still advocate, take the players you like. I mean, if you really believe in Joe Mixon and you really believe in Jerick McKinnon, then go and buy those guys for sure. You're going to want to root for them. I mean, this is supposed to be fun at the end of the day. So go get them. I do love the fact, and I think you have to find those cheaper guys. And I think you found two. Geis is one that I like as a cheaper kind of player if you can get him for a cheap price. And Rex Burkhead is a guy I love, especially now. I mean, I think his price is probably going to climb, but again, I haven't seen it happen yet, and I think it's because most owners spend so much early on in their draft that they can't afford to pay up for a guy like Rex Burkhead at the juncture that he's getting nominated at in drafts. So, yeah, I mean, to me, he looks like a pretty safe kind of bench or flex play at RB that has, to me, weekly for sure RB2 fairly safe floor right now, especially if Sony Michel misses time. It's why I like Dion Lewis. It's why I like Royce Freeman, guys like that in those same kind of positions, because they're cheap and they're going to get touches, I think. So, yeah, those are the guys you want to target for sure if you're doing it that way.
Well, and we like Jerick McKinnon and Joe Mixon right now. If you look at the average auction values, I mean, you get the two of them combined for right now $56. But right now, Joe Mixon is he's the best in the value indicator right now. Well, he's tied with Rashad Penny, but we've got him ranked at 14, whereas other, consensus wise outside of our site have him lower than that. So he's a value. Jerick McKinnon, same thing. We have him at a $5 savings right now. So they're two good guys to buy that have good upside. I just wonder sometimes a little bit about the floor. And Jerick McKinnon just scares me that little bit, Slim. He couldn't beat out Matt Asiata. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, there's risk here, and I think if it was for me, I would rather target a guy like Devontae Freeman maybe in that instance. But I from what I'm seeing, Freeman goes for usually quite a bit higher than what Jerick McKinnon does. So I get that that's not always possible. But yeah, I think anybody at this point, we kind of start getting some red flags about them. I do like McKinnon. I think, there's some RB1 upside there. A little bit of a gamble, but I mean, like I said, a lot of these guys are gambles to some extent right now. So yeah, if he's like the top of your tier, and that's the thing, once you get into this guy, like the groups of McKinnon, Mixon, you guys might have all these, we'll call it maybe your tier 3 of running backs. If these are the guys that you have the highest in that tier, then sure, go get them.
Okay. Yeah. And hey, you know me, I love Geis this year. I think he's going to be a beast there. I really do. I think the skill set's there. I think the pedigree's there. If you go 18 months ago, you were hearing about him being Saquon Barkley, right? So I think he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit because of what Barkley did last year. But, 2 years ago, he was the man, right?
Is it really that crazy to say that he could outscore Barkley this year?
No, not at all.
I don't think so either. And if he's going for a third of what Saquon is, not even almost a quarter of what Saquon is, then it seems like a pretty good value. But
now, speaking of beast, Slim, did you see the tweet today? Was it today or yesterday? Maybe it was last night, of the Jadeveon Clowney.
I did.
High school footage.
I
did.
Oh
my God. It was unbelievable.
I mean,
it really was unbelievable.
When he got off the ball, like literally most of the time, the tackle that was lined up opposite him hadn't even moved yet, and he was like on him. He was like in the backfield. I thought there was one play where literally as the ball, I think the quarterback was like lined up in shotgun. It looked like, and I mean, it was high school footage. It was kind of grainy, but it looked almost like he almost intercepted the snap from the center to the quarterback, as like he timed it perfect, just kind of ripped it right out of the quarterback's hands as the ball got to him back there. He was so fast like that. And I mean, just the size difference and everything. But
clip. Oh, yeah, the size difference. I mean, it looked Photoshopped. That's what I put on Twitter. Like, it looked fake. Like, they just took him out of his, NFL film and superimposed him on high school film, because it looked unfair.
Yes.
I'm sure the guys feel. Can you imagine being the tackle? You're a 16-year-old left tackle, and you're like, pardon me, you want me to block this guy all day?
Yeah, no.
Cut block. Like, I mean, there's nothing. What are you going to do?
I don't think you could do anything. Literally. You could, there's nothing. Try and
that opening clip where
it wouldn't even matter. He was so big and quick and athletic. Like,
he chased that guy down from behind in that first clip. Like, the guy was 30 yards in front of him, and he just he got on his horse, and those long legs were going, and that's a D lineman. It's just not fair. No. Anyways, sorry, freaks. Let's talk about freaks. Anyways, okay, so that's at Caleb Lampert's question. So let's move on to the next one. This one is at S Raider guy. He has $100 budget, Slim. He's keeping Kamara at 3 and Michael Thomas at 7. Sick. Yes. How should I budget the other $90? Should he go mid-tier or value guys, or go get another stud at running back or wide receiver? I think I know your answer here.
In keeper, man, I always want to get studs. Like, especially like if you're saving so much money, like it's almost like you get Kamara and Michael Thomas just put on your roster for free. So could you just imagine partnering those guys with one of the other premier assets? And I always want to try and go running back. I mean, I don't know what the starting requirements are. Here, you're blessed in the sense of you've got Kamara and a receiver as well, and Mike Thomas, who's really good, obviously. And so a lot depends on who's available. If I can get another stud running back, then I would usually pick that option. If I can't, then I'd just quickly pivot to get an elite wide receiver. And
that's going to depend on who's being kept by the other teams too, right? What's available. You're going to find value in one of those things anyways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much value in the later tiers that you don't have to just stockpile all that value. I mean, you have the resources to go and get another elite talent, then go and get it. And I mean, it sounds like you keep 2 guys, so that should mean that there's going to be some good players available. Now, most of the top running backs, I'm assuming, are probably going to be kept. But so if that's the case, then all right, I'll just go and get a couple, maybe 2 really good wide receivers. Maybe I take the values that are in the top tier, the Keenan Allens, or I'm trying to think, Larry Fitzgeralds and things like that. And those are the guys that I pair with Michael Thomas. And all of a sudden I've got 3 top 12 wide receivers. So that's not bad either.
Hey, I just saw coming in on the wire. Did you hear Corey Coleman just got sent to the Bills?
No.
Yeah. Oh. So according to Adam Schefter, he has been traded in exchange for an undisclosed draft pick.
Well,
Any
I am
interest there?
freaking glad that I traded Corey Coleman this offseason in our dynasty league, so in our home league for that.
Well, does he have more value now though if he's over there?
No.
He's not buried behind all those other guys. He's competing against Kelvin Benjamin.
He's buried behind absolute garbage quarterback play and a horrible offense. Okay. So, no, I think it actually makes it.
I like the live reaction. Good.
But, yeah. I feel bad for him, though, because he just could never kind of some really shitty luck injuries in Cleveland. And now they bring in Jarvis Landry. And now he's traded to Buffalo. Can't catch a break.
Yeah. No, cannot catch a break. No. That's Lillian Werner game show reference. Maybe if I can find that would be good. I mean, I'm just going to, hopefully I can find that. Okay. Anyways, here's the next question. This is from our buddy Kiwi at Windy City Loyal. I did love that he was at the Crusaders rugby match the other day. Like, I love that he just like posts some of those pictures and he's there, 15 rows up behind the end zone watching championship rugby.
Yeah.
Anyways, but he's a Bears fan, so we'll let that. Part of it's cool. Anyways, so his question is this: taking the auction U theory into a draft, do you attempt to predict that the drop in taking the auction value theory into a draft? Do you attempt to predict that the drop in the value will be over the entire auction, or with enough information and a bit of luck that you can predict it at each position?
Well, I guess the U for me doesn't apply to the entire draft. I find it works over maybe one big tier or else two tiers. So really commonly I find it, say the last couple of years for sure, it's been in the top tiers of wide receivers. Usually for me in my top two tiers. So I'm talking about maybe 6 to 8 players. So just for an example, I guess, let's just use for the sake of argument here. If we go by our consensus rankings, we'll use the top 8: Antonio Brown, Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Odell, Mike Thomas, Devontae Adams, AJ Green, and Julio Jones. So we'll say that that's the top 8. And you could say we could even break them into 2 tiers, which probably a lot of people might do. You get your Browns and Hopkins and maybe Beckham. And then after that, it could be, Keenan Allen, Thomas, AJ Green, Julio, Adams in some particular order. But I think probably a lot of those names fall into the tops of most people's rankings. So kind of how it plays out is the first couple guys usually going to be Brown and Hopkins. Right. For you uncreative leagues that just draft off the sheet, which I freaking hate, but whatever. That happens most of the time. Those guys go, it's pretty chalky. They go for right around their $60 mark, maybe a bit more because somebody really wants Antonio Brown and they don't like any of the other options as much, and there you go. Okay. And then what happens is guys kind of settle in, and the more savvy drafters will say, or, look at this and say, you know what, there's 6, 8 guys right now that I would really like to have. I'd be very comfortable with as my wide receiver 1. So when Odell gets nominated or Mike Thomas, they don't panic. They don't find a need to bid up really high because they know there's a lot of other players out there that they're comfortable with. It's what happens when now all of a sudden it is just AJ Green and Julio Jones left, and now you have a tier break and you have the decision to make of, oh shit, do I take Green or Jones, or do I really want to start, Mike Evans or Larry Fitzgerald or Diggs or Baldwin as my wide receiver 1? And maybe this year that might even apply more. I mean, guy like Doug Baldwin, a little banged up right now. His stock might be dropping. Larry Fitzgerald never typically gets that much love. So then it makes that guy that really wanted that one of those wide receiver 1s say, you know what, I got to go get Julio. And he's on the board right now. I just got to go get him. And you get into a little bit of a bidding war. You get a little aggressive because you feel the need to really get a player from that tier that in your brain you said to yourself before your draft, I'm getting one of these guys, somebody from this tier. And when you start looking at the black lines all through that tier and there's just one or two names left, you kind of panic a little bit. And rightly or wrongly, I mean, but that's kind of how that U works. And then those bottom guys end up oftentimes being priced more closely to the first couple guys that came off the board versus the middle guys in that entire group. So it's something you can't really predict through the entire draft because most of these players are gone. But I do find it as something that is fairly predictable. And again, it's more or less just trying not to leave one name or maybe even two left in your tiers, trying to get some players from those tiers that you like before there's just not a lot of options left.
Right. And I mean, that ties into the question we talked to at the beginning from M_Niller too, that idea of maybe trying to find, the savings in there to apply in other places, but not the whole draft, but specifically in the tiers, in the individual positions, right? And more likely the upper tiers, because really how you're going to find the sweet spot in guys that are range dollars, right? In that tier, that's a tough, oh boy, I got this guy for 2, I have him for 3. It's not really that big, that much of a big savings there.
Yeah, and I mean, there is some luck to it too. I mean,
sure.
If you're targeting a guy that no one else in your draft is really that high on, that's going to be good for you too. You like AJ Green and no one else really does, then yeah, you're probably going to end up getting him at a bit of a discount if you stick it out and try and get that player. So if it just so happens he kind of falls in the middle of those tiers when he comes off the board, then that could work out that way too. So there's some luck, but I think sometimes you can predict it.
So I've seen a lot of traffic to the Auction U article on the website. So head on over to the fantasyfootballauction.com. There's an Auction U article on there. You can see the graphic has actual graph that demonstrates the U with its running back, the top tier of running backs. Shout out to @SeniorHines for giving us a tweet. I love when he says, love the U concept, been using it for years, heard it from you guys first. Looking forward to defending his big auction championship this year. So good luck to him. Guys are out there using the U. They're reading about the U, Slim. We talk about it lots. But the first step to the U is creating your own tiers, correct?
Very correct. Yep.
All right. Awesome. And if you want to know how to draft or how to set up your running back tiers, premium podcast, Slim nailed it already a couple of weeks ago for members. So you can get the $15 membership on the site and get the articles and the premium podcasts and the spreadsheets, or you can get the middle tier membership, $10, get you the premium podcast and the sheets, and that includes the draft sheets and the cheat sheets and the tiering sheets and the auction value sheets, so you can do your own tiering that way too. Or for $5, you can jump on and you can get just the auction values. I just helped out someone while we were talking in the last question. Shout out to Shay for being patient. I quickly just went out there. He got onto the Patreon site, gave us a little bit of cash there so we can get his pause on the auction value spreadsheet. So the link was there. Boom, I can see he's actually, well, I can't see that he's on there right now, but there's a handful of people are checking it out, members right there on the page. So anyways, there's a little in-pod plug, Slim.
Yes.
Shameless. Anyways, move on. You got to do it. So it's an interesting question here, Slim, coming up. New settings here for us to talk about. @Butsy888 is asking this question: how do you tackle IDP in your auction? So
I see what he
that's
did there.
First things first. What he also says, he's got an auction where everybody has 2 people nominated at a time, 16 teams. That's a whole different question. So IDP auction, Slim, how does that change things?
Well, it is. Here's where, when you're doing a unique draft, I mean, it's hard to prep. There is no better prep than actually doing that draft. We get a lot of questions for things like that. What I would do when I go into a draft like this, the biggest thing I want to know is how much do others want to value the IDP positions? For
really
me,
doesn't matter on your scoring too, though, right? Slim number of IDPs in your scoring have a big impact.
You're right. If you're starting one IDP at each position, you know, say one D line, one linebacker, one DB, then yeah, I don't think you need to put much emphasis into it at all. You're going to get somebody good no matter what.
It becomes a onesie position, right?
Yes.
Like it becomes a tight end quarterback. You can stream really at D line.
For sure. You know, even at 2, not terrible for most positions, especially. I'd probably want one elite defensive end for sure. But after that, you start getting to starting 3 at each, something like that. Then I think what you always want to do too is go in if you can and see how all these IDP positions score versus themselves, but even the other, like the offensive players. There's all kinds of different formats for scoring IDP that some really reward them, some make them almost like kickers. And if that's the case, then again, it doesn't matter. That's something you can use to your advantage and not spend much on at all.
And NFL does a great job of allowing you to get in there and see that, right?
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. If you're drafting in an MFL, like Bucks just said, you can go into league scoring and filter however you want, and you can see everything. Now, again, some of the positions are devalued and overvalued. Like I like defensive linemen. If I can get my hands on some of the elite guys there, they're just harder to find. So that's why to me there's more value placed there. For the linebackers, they're probably a little easier to find than defensive linemen for sure. There's more of them. So there's just there's more opportunity to find points there. And with DBs, with the way secondaries change year in, year out, you can dig deep, and throughout the season, safeties and corners are going to emerge that will be fantasy viable. So I guess what I would do going into the draft, once I've figured out how I want to prioritize the IDP guys, I need to see how the draft is going to do it. So probably what I would do in a draft where it looks like IDP is going to be a decent factor in fantasy scoring, I would probably nominate one of the top linebackers really early and just see what the draft does. Again, who's bidding, how much is being bid, just to get an idea of how much I'm going to have to spend on these positions. If it looks like people are going crazy, then I know, okay, I can sit back and wait and try and grab some value. Or if people are undervaluing these guys, then I know that maybe this is something I can exploit, and I can gobble up some of this top end talent because a lot of the league is not valuing them like like I think they should be, at least in terms of how many points they're going to get. And I would do it with linebackers, probably not defensive linemen, because I don't want to burn a good defensive lineman. I know there's lots of good linebackers, lots of high scoring linebackers typically. I can kind of throw one under the bus and run the risk of maybe not getting them if people get crazy in the bidding, as me just trying to use it as a feeler. I don't want to do that with one of the top defensive ends. I would rather hopefully get a feel and then try and scoop up some of the values that I can at defensive end if possible. So that's kind of how I think I would tackle it. I don't know, Bucks, if you got anything.
Well, what I was just going to say is I love the idea that you just said, not only putting one out as a feeler, which is great because you can kind of have an idea, but especially if this is new to your league, which I'm guessing when you're asking a question on how do you tackle IDP, this is going to be fairly new to your league. Throwing out the feeler, great. I love that as the benchmark, but I also like the point that you made, Slim. See who's doing the bidding on it as well. I think that's really an interesting point. Auction allows you to kind of see that, and maybe there's a couple of guys that are valuing these IDP players a lot differently than you are and a lot differently than the rest of the league is too. So I think that's an interesting concept as well. You might be able to suck a little money out of that guy who, you know, wants all the linebackers on their LBU team by playing that, right?
Yep.
It's a great
For
point.
sure.
It's a great point to look at who's doing the nominating too. I thought that's something we don't always talk about. So
I agree.
Anywho,
and then when they fill up their spots or start
yeah,
those guys, then you can just say, hey, I got carte blanche here to just kind of go wild, and I got no resistance coming from this maniac that's over here that now has spots filled up.
Awesome. Okay, next part of the question from Butsy here. Also, in an auction, when everybody has two people nominated at the same time, then it's a 16 team. So 16 teams, two people nominated at the same time. I'm guessing it's a slow draft. Obviously, I don't know how in the hell you would do it otherwise. 16 teams, two people nominated, so 32 people out there in the nomination. Is there even a nomination strategy for that?
I'm going to let you go, Bucks, because I think you've done more of these than I have with these slow drafts where you nominate multiple guys.
I think it's the same thing. I really do. And I think that it allows you to, in the slow draft, take your time in who you're going to nominate rather than just the chalk, you know, oh, next guy up. I think it allows you to do that. I think it gives you more time to sift through the rosters of people in your league to see who's got what, who's been spending on what, who's been nominating what. It allows you to really gear down in your auction and pick apart those strategies. So I think the nomination strategy becomes even more important because you got the time to do so. Does that make sense, Slim?
Yeah, I think I'm just curious. I feel like you lose a lot of not control, because there's just so many players on the block at a given time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the players you like, or maybe that you would want to nominate, are probably nominated when you're nominating guys. So it kind of is like, I think I would still want to be nominating players that I don't really want, hoping to get people to spend. But
especially early in this type of format.
Yeah, for sure. But I agree. I think the time can help, like you said, really either come up with alternate plans for yourself, but like you said, sift through other guys' rosters and try and maybe predict which way they're going to want to go, or even which players, and maybe not specific players, but which positions, or even just price ranges of players that they might be targeting. So whether you can bait somebody into buying a guy, or even just avoid nominating players in a certain price range. But again, you've got a lot of other players that are going to be thrown out there that you have zero control, that are just kind of flooding the market at a given time. But hopefully
these drafts are tricky too, Slim, is that so usually, like, first round, everyone puts out two players, right? And then someone gets bought, and now there's, you know, all of a sudden there's only 25 guys out there, but the new nominations are coming in. And then after, you know, that first day or first kind of roundish of draft or of picks, now you're seeing the variance out there, right? Somebody's got an hour left on the clock. Someone's still got 8 hours left on their clock, right? And then a bid comes in and it resets the, you know, now it's an additional hour or whatever it is. So you can still kind of play those auction use. It's different than sitting there with one guy on the block and you have one guy to pay attention to it. But it still allows you to play some of those and across the board. 'Cause it's not just 32 guys on the block all the time at the, you know, they're all coming off the block at the same time. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
So that's where you still have to be methodical, be patient. Don't get excited just because you see 30 guys on the block at one time. You can still, especially after that first round, you can still play your strategies in there.
Or when you're winning a bid and some fucking guy bids you up with like 3 minutes left on the and bids you up 50 cents or $1. Some of them set up for 50 cents and stuff. And you want to just smash your computer, but don't.
And some of them you can do the auto bid too, right? Which kind of helps. Like you say, I'm going to put, $35 on this guy, and then it one up, one, two. So it's hard. It's really tough to pay attention to and to stay hyper involved all the way through. But if you don't, you're going to not find the value there somewhere, right? So I still think you can play a lot of those nomination strategies that we talk about all the time, to find the values and still work your auction use. It's just a little bit different the way that it looks. But you're right, you don't have the same control all the time because of the number of people that are on the block. And all of a sudden you get someone you didn't think you were going to get, and you're hoping that you're going to get right now you have the high bid on the next guy too. And oh crap, so you have to be able to really be flexible and have a lot of ideas where to go. I've been caught in that situation before where you're like, I'm just going to upbid a guy here to be able to go for 40. And then you get them for 41 and you're still the high bid on the next guy at 39. And you're like, oh crap. What am I going to do after this? Right? Because if no one upbids you there, bang, bang, you get them both now. And you weren't necessarily predicting
that's right.
that, So you're right. You lose a little bit of control too.
Yeah, okay. Definitely a different beast for sure.
Absolutely. That'd be, I've done a couple of slow auctions lately. I haven't done one this year yet, but they are, it's a different beast for sure.
Yep.
Be interesting. Maybe I should try to find my way onto one here. Get myself primed for August Slim where all the drafts come hot and heavy.
Oh yeah, I know.
So, okay. So last question here, and hopefully, it's going to be interesting to talk about here, son. So this is at David is not right. Maybe his wife made the Twitter handle. I don't know. Just guessing. But anyways, he's not right. David's not right. So here's his question. Can you discuss quarterback values in a 12-team Superflex? This changes things a lot. So.
It does. I mean, I guess the biggest thing, and I'll be honest, like when we get our mock draft data and things, it's never for Superflex. Mainly because most mock drafts, they don't support Superflex. So we used to do a few where we had where we had arranged for people to all sit in, and we just kind of made it clear, hey, let's draft this like it's a Superflex ahead of time, and it was great. But that very rarely ever happens. So I guess the biggest thing is what you need to do is just try and figure out what you should be spending on quarterback. And again, just like anything, it comes down to knowing your league. I mean, I know our home leagues that we all draft in, most have prescribed to this theory of the late round quarterback. So prices for us are usually really, really cheap, most cases. So if you know that going in, I mean, even in our in the home league that I commission, we switched to Superflex last year. The prices were a little bit higher than what I still thought they would go for, but if you compare them to most of the Superflexes, I would be confident that they would still be on the lower side of things. So again, I guess you got to figure out what you need to spend. One of the kind of general rules of thumb I do is I try and look at, so what are the top players going for at other positions, and then I try and figure out how I can make the top quarterbacks go for, or just maybe the top quarterback go for that same price. So if I use somebody like Aaron Rodgers for an example, if he's going for $35 and I want to try and balance him out to say $65, for example, because that's maybe what the top running back is going for. Some simple math, I can just divide 65 by 35 and I get just a factor of 1.86. So that would be just a number I can try and multiply every quarterback price by to give me some kind of rough idea of maybe what they could cost in a Superflex setting where quarterbacks are going to be valued more. Is it going to be perfect? No. But at least it gives you a ballpark, especially for the top guys. And you can maybe see then if some of those top guys are going for a lot cheaper than what you think they should be. Maybe you jump on that, or, at least what to expect, kind of even just to create a budget for yourself is something to kind of get going with. So yeah, that's kind of how, for me at least, I kind of try and grab prices. I don't know.
Very specific. You're right there, and it's something we're going to add to the auction values sheet. I've been promising to do it, Slim. So that's something that we're going to add, because we do get more and more questions on it, because they're becoming more and more popular, right? And we advocate all the time: drop the kicker, drop the defense, add a super flex, add an additional flex, and now you really got a league, right?
I agree. I think it's becoming more and more common. And if you're not in one, I think you should be. Just help bump up even just the quarterback value in your draft. And in terms of like roster construction, for me, it's pretty straightforward. I want to get a quarterback. We've probably said this before. One quarterback that I have in my top 12. Usually for me, it's in the bottom part of that top 12, because I'm not going to pay the money to get, one of the top 5 guys in most cases.
Why not grab a Stafford or a Cousins or
right? Yeah, exactly. Those are the guys. What are they? Stafford is been a common one for me a lot. Cousins, another one. Phillip Rivers, like you mentioned before. Then I'm looking to grab somebody in the top 24 as my QB2 and I'm kind of looking for value, and I'm trying to go by rankings and try and find values. Alex Smith is one guy for me, Matt Ryan. And
Derek Carr.
Wow, he kind of falls to me more at the bottom. He kind of, for me, slots into what I was going to say next. And then I take this flyer. Okay. I want a third quarterback in most cases. I want him to be very cheap. So sometimes that's Derek Carr, a guy that I still think can fit into that top 24, but I want him to be very cheap. Andy Dalton is usually one of those guys. If I'm going straight flyer, I've been taking a lot of Rosen because I don't believe that Bradford can stay healthy. And maybe there's a chance that Rosen even wins the job outright. And if the team is struggling early, they might just put Rosen in just to see what he can do and get him some reps. So he's a guy that I take a lot of the times as this kind of flyer guy that when bye weeks start hitting and God forbid injuries, hopefully he'll have cemented himself as the starter. And Lamar Jackson is a guy that I would like to get to. He's becoming a little bit harder to get oftentimes with a little bit of the hype there. Although after his fairly poor looking Hall of Fame game, that might help things. But Andrew Luck's an interesting guy. If I can get him as my QB2, I mean, somehow he still seems to be falling. I guess people are still freaked out by this injury. I personally think he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But if you can get him as your quarterback too at a value, lovely.
All right. Awesome. So those are Twitter questions, Slim. I was thinking about doing news and notes at the front end of the pod, but why don't we just give me like a rapid fire. We've got a couple guys that are questioning. Just tell me quickly, rapid fire, what you're doing with them right now. So Dougie Baldwin's banged up a little bit. What are you doing with him?
I'm still buying. I'll be honest though. Usually he's been a value. Sorry, this is gonna be rapid fire, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
But this year he's actually not as much of a value as I thought he would be.
Value indicator 0 right now. He's right where he's supposed to be. Yeah.
Like if I could get him in the early 30s, I'd be cool with that. If I'm getting him in like closer to $40, I'm gonna probably pass at this point, at least until we see some more stuff with his knee. But if I can get him mid 30s, like 35 or cheaper, I'd probably still buy.
Okay. What about Sony Michel now with the news that he's going to need some surgery?
Well, considering I had him as a sell, spoiler alert, for in my running back tiers premium podcast, this to me even makes him more of a sell. I need to see him get out.
Are you drafting him in redraft?
In redraft, I probably won't because I still think he's going to be his price has come down just even in the last like 2 days from what I've been seeing in the data, but it's still like I need it to be, probably $4 or less. Yeah. To be, I mean, when Rex Burkhead is still going for like $5, and he's still going for more than him, I'm taking Rex Burkhead.
Yeah. And I still think that they play Sexy Rexy in the slot a little bit while Edelman's out. Especially now that I hear that Edelman's maybe a little bit on the out of shape.
The receiver group is looking worse and worse by the, Jordan Matthews getting cut now. And I mean, we'll see.
Hey, what do you think? What do you think about the Eric Decker signing though? I find that intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of it, kind of. I mean, I don't necessarily think Decker's like done or anything. Yeah, he didn't produce. I know I took him in the fishbowl last year and he freaking killed me, but I think a lot was more a product of the offense. I'm interested to see like
this offense will probably be good.
Well, they should score some points, and I think he's going to be a pretty solid red zone target. So like just even on touchdown upside, I think he's going to be interesting. So definitely could be a nice little late flyer at the end of your draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what about Josh Gordon?
Josh Gordon, I'm buying. Like, I don't believe they just traded Corey Coleman. Yeah. If they thought Josh Gordon was in trouble, they wouldn't trade him. So, I mean, none of this stuff worries me about Gordon. I'm hoping to get him, in the early 20s in terms of price if I can. So, yeah, I'm not scared off by any of this.
Okay, and last one on the list here, Slim, Martavis Bryant.
I'm just gonna avoid him altogether. I'm a little bit worried. One, I don't think he can really help my fantasy team a whole ton, so I'm not going to invest a lot there anyway. And I do worry that there is potential for some type of lengthy suspension of some kind. I mean, I don't know. He just seems to not be able to get it together. I don't trust that there's absolutely nothing there that he's just going to not play. So until that's cleared up, I probably won't even be looking at him at all in my draft.
And I think even if he plays 16, he's not really much use. Really?
No, I don't think he's not gonna be a league winner for you. So if that's the case, then I'll go buy Chris Hogan for the same price or something like that. Like,
sure, makes total sense. All right, so hey, that was a little bit longer than we normally go, Slim, but there was some good stuff. I kind of like these listener question ones that our followers are starting to ask some really good questions that are specific to what they need, but still really allow us to talk general strategy around different things. So yeah, hopefully it's beneficial for those who aren't asking the questions too, because I think at least the way that I hear it when I hear you talking or you and Blister talking, that it's still general auction strategy. We're still talking nomination strategies and bidding strategies and tiering and the U and all of those things just wrapped around in different questions, but it does lead us into the right areas for the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's the time of the year, but for sure, a lot of our followers, some of these questions are tough too. They make you think, which is good. I like it too. It makes me have to sit down sometimes and go through some past practices, and they're good little thought exercises to me. Oh yeah, you know what? I should be maybe doing that more or something like it. So I love it too.
Okay, awesome. Well, we do have scheduling here now moving forward. We're going to look into some more position-based pods. So we will talk and do a running back pod, a wide receiver pod, a onesie pod, which like QBs and tight ends. We will not do a kicker pod. We will not do a defense pod, just so you know. Those things won't exist. And if you look at the auction values page on the website, you'll see Slim's thoughts exactly when ranking kickers and defenses. He has that pretty clear in his rankings. So feel free to check that out.
It's my little Easter egg.
On that, yeah, a little Easter egg. Very nice, very nice. So on that note, if you're mocking and or doing actual drafts, send us the results so that we can put those into our numbers so that we can crunch them and get those accurate auction values for everybody. When you do, we'll enter your name in for a draw. Kirby got it this time, right? The Chalupa Batman, he got it this time. Next week it could be you. So the more entries you send, the better your chances are of winning. So I will send out that link tonight to get that free membership set up for him. So feel free to send it to us. It's auctionmockdraft@gmail.com. auctionmockdraft@gmail.com. If you have Twitter questions, make sure you send them to us at Fantasy Auction. Slim will get them out there. He'll answer tweet my opinion too often. And if the question's longer than what Twitter will allow you to ask, feel free to email us, footballauctioneer@gmail.com. We get those questions all the time, and the guys are always answering stuff. And heck, we even get some Facebook questions too. I don't even know how to get there on Facebook anymore, but there's some guys that follow us on there and ask some questions either as messages on there or post comments as well. So lots of different ways to get to us. Auction drafts are going to start to heat up here. So that means we're going to start to heat up. Slim's got some premium pods coming. Blister's just released 2 different articles this week that we've just put out. And the podcast will start to be getting a little bit more specific as we get you ready for your auction drafts. Anything else, Slim, that I'm forgetting?
Nope.
Awesome. Could you hear me okay tonight? Because I just noticed the blinking light on my microphone, which would mean that it's on mute. But I'm guessing you're hearing me through the speaker on my headphones.
I have heard you fine. A couple little garbly sections of some, but nothing terrible.
Am I a little bit louder if I hold it up like this? Am I a little bit louder if I hold it up like this?
Not that much louder, no.
Okay, well, they're hearing me somehow, so that's good. Because it's showing the meters are all good. Gosh, I hope we didn't just do an hour 20-ish on the pod and you couldn't hear me. Anyways, hopefully we can. So our thoughts are next week. Hopefully we can Blister and I are in an auction draft on Sunday night, so we may need to record on a different night this week. So be alert to that. We might be releasing the pod a little bit early this week. Please, if you like the pod, get on whatever app you use to listen to the pod, rate and review us. That would be awesome. I just sent out a little email newsletter to many people out there today. If by the end of the day on Monday, because it's our long weekend here in Canada, you give us a rate and review, just take a screenshot of that, email it to us at footballauctioneer@gmail.com. I'll send you a promo code for $5 off the auctioneer level membership. So it helps us move up the ranks. It helps spread the word of auction. So you help us, we'll help you. How's that sound, Slim?
Sounds amazing. Love it.
All right, so that's the end of the day, Monday. That's going to be the deadline because that's when our long weekend's over. But Slim, we're educators. The summer, it's always a long weekend.
Yeah, right now it is. Yes,
exactly. Well, actually, I'm lying. I am going into work tomorrow morning because I have to bring the new teachers out there. Dun dun dun.
Great.
Now, just on a note, that night, remember I talked to you about the 3 Long Island teas that went in quick?
Yep.
Yeah, the next morning I was supposed to meet them out there, and I forgot I was supposed to meet them out there.
Hey, boss.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to try to totally redeem myself tomorrow morning. Yeah, well, I know, but you're going to drive all the way out there, and then there's nobody there, and you can't get into the school. That's no good either.
Bring them a coffee tomorrow.
Anyways, there you go. Perfect. They're young teachers. They're okay. Anyways, okay, so hopefully we'll see Blister. Hopefully you had a good round tonight. Blister, I know you're listening to this at some point. Tweet us how your round went. Hopefully it was as good as Minnows was the other night. Did you see that, Slim?
Oh, I thought you were going to say our counterpart there that had a little snooze on the grass from the pictures.
I did see him today in a store, and I said, you look a lot better today than the last picture I saw of you, which was good.
But no, I didn't see.
No, yeah, so no, Minnow, our buddy Minnow, busted par the other night, so good for him.
Wow.
Shot a 70, I think it was.
Nice.
Yeah, that's why we bring him on the golf trip. No, we don't want those guys on the golf trip. We want more me's out there. Just whack, whack, pick up the beaver tail, but the ball's still there, you know. those types of things. Anyways, okay, Slim. I guess we'll. We're gonna see you on Twitter a ton, and we'll probably see you before Sunday this weekend. Blister, we'll see you before Sunday, and for everybody else, I'll see you when it's springtime in the Rockies.